I had always considered myself an experienced hiker. I had learned a lot of valuable lessons, many from my own mistakes over the years. My favorite trail was one I had traversed countless times. It wound its way through a remote part of the forest, miles from the nearest town. It was here, on a crisp afternoon during the ending days of summer, that I found myself standing at the edge of an unexplainable mystery. The first oddity was subtle, a scrap of bright yellow fabric that clung to the bark of a tree. It was so out of place that it instantly drew my attention. As I approached, I saw that it was a torn piece of clothing, the edges frayed and weathered as if it had been there for days. My initial thought was that someone had simply brushed against the tree, possibly snagging their shirt. It wasn't a definite cause for any alarm. I continued my way along the trail, mainly at ease, but my senses were a little more heightened. I ended up taking a narrow side path that was a bit more challenging. It was along here that I stumbled upon a single hiking boot, muddy and worn, lying off on the side of the path. It was positioned awkwardly. I've seen such things before. A piece of lost gear, a lost accessory or something. But there was something about this that made me want to link it to the torn piece of fabric I saw, which in that case would make it seem as though someone was running from something. I kept telling myself to stop overanalyzing as I pressed on. After all, I didn't know the situation, and I wasn't out here trying to play detective. I kind of suspected they could have had a run-in with a bear or something, worst case scenario. But the unknowns had me glancing over my shoulder more than usual. I had gone on for a bit more and was about to break for a light lunch when I noticed a small backpack. It was half hidden under a thicket. The backpack was unzipped, its contents strewn about. A water bottle, a trail map, a couple of energy bars. If this hiker was running from something, granted all of this did link to the same person, did they just happen to lose it? Or did they purposely shed it to make themselves lighter and get away faster? I was still pondering when my eye caught a quick glint of something, the shimmer of a phone screen as the sun hit it just right through the many scattered and dense trees. As I attempt to examine it, the phone looked beat up and had no charge. I had a gut feeling that whoever this was didn't mean to drop it, as it lay a handful of paces ahead. The whole situation was odd and increasingly nerve-wracking. While I didn't know what, I now knew that something had happened out here. All I knew to do in that moment was to take note of where all this was found, turn the phone into the park authorities and report my findings. My anxious state at the time had increased, and I can only hope I made the best choices. I started to hastily backtrack when a chilling realization hit me. Was this hiker still out there? Lost, wounded, dead? Could this turn into a search for a missing person? Or maybe and hopefully, they did make it out, are alive and well and are now just trying to recover their lost items. You just never know. I scanned the forest as I continued. The trees seemed to close in around me. My main objective was to get myself back safely before nightfall and report the incident. I fought the urge to run, knowing that panic could lead to a misstep and just make things worse. Finally, the familiar markers of the trailhead came into view, and I breathed a sigh of relief as I crossed into the open. I wasted no time in reporting my findings to the park authorities, handing over the phone and describing the disheveled trail of belongings. The rangers reassured me, and I was asked a short series of questions. I could only hope that all of this would link back to that hiker, and hopefully uncover some answers. I later walked to my car as the horizon swallowed the last of the setting sun. The bluish hues made the woods look gloomy as the shadows deepened. Haunting images of what may have happened out there still lingered in my mind, leaving me unsettled. I never did get any closure on what happened. All I can do is still hope that the hiker made it out okay. There seemed to be a period of a few days where the night crackled with oddities. It started with Anna, back in late August, when the temperatures chilled to a degree where we no longer required the use of our window coolers. Anna asked me if I had gotten up in the middle of the night and gone out the front door. She said she distinctly heard it opened and assumed. Assumed what? That I decided to walk the streets at 2 a.m.? No one was awake, with the exception of a wide-eyed Anna, much less up and wandering the neighborhood at such an hour. She asked this a couple of times, certain that she had heard me on more than one occasion, walking through the house, opening doors. I dismissed it as Anna not yet being comfortable with noises in a different home. It was cooling after all, and we know how a house can pop and sigh as its structure adjusts to the changing seasons. When Lena and I left for Labor Day weekend to get our winter supply of firewood, Anna stayed behind to watch the animals, Callie, Tuck, and Luna. Luna slept in Anna's room, which I'm sure was a comfort to both of them. Early one morning, Anna awakened when she felt our cat Callie jump on her bed and walk across her. When Anna turned to give Callie a pat, there was no cat to be found. Anna usually keeps her bedroom door closed, and Tuck isn't allowed out of the family room or basement area because he's an utter terror, so it could only be Callie. But Callie, face tucked against two thick paws, was asleep on her bed upstairs. It wasn't enough to make Anna uncomfortable, but it did give her a pause. Then during the early morning hours of a different day, Anna heard someone call her name. She said it was clear, loud, and concise, as though someone was trying to get her attention. She told me about it, and I mentioned a similar circumstance I'd had a few years back. It was still acceptable to find possible solutions to these two situations, the more common suggestions being dreams or imagination. But still odd. After a long weekend of cutting, splitting, loading, and stacking lodgepole firewood, we were all tired. I got a long hot shower, washed my hair twice to get the sawdust, dirt, and sweat out of it, and slipped into a comfortable pair of shorts and t-shirt before falling into bed. I typically sleep on my left side facing a large box fan that sits on the end table. The room was dark, the weight of the blankets just right, and after reading a chapter in my latest Anne Rule novel, I clicked off my iPad and went to sleep. A couple of hours passed before I was awakened by the mattress near my legs depressing, as though someone had just seated themselves on the bed. I quickly pushed myself into a seated position and began patting the bed where I felt it sink in. Nothing. My heart beat a little faster, but I can't say that I was scared, just startled. I slowly fell back to my pillow, rolled to my side, and thought about how this very same thing happened when my dad's mom passed away. Only that time, the depression on the bed was followed by a sharp tap on the headboard. I lay on my side for a few minutes, reasoning what I'd felt must have been imagined, the remnants of a dream, perhaps. But then it happened again. The weight was so obvious that my body rolled slightly in the direction where it felt as though someone had seated themselves on the side of the bed. I sat upright, moving a bit faster and with purpose, as I quickly tapped and smeared the entire blanket at my side, thinking to myself that there has to be a cat up here, assuming it was our cat Callie just somehow being sneaky and getting past me. With the weight that I was feeling, I vowed to reduce Callie's treats as I continued sweeping the foot of the bed and flipping covers, trying to find where this weight was coming from. The whole treat thing is a tradition she and I have when Lena's working, but maybe the treats have added more padding to the girl than I had originally thought. But Callie wasn't in the bed. In fact, she wasn't even in the room. A couple of days later, the moon was bright. I was having difficulty sleeping, my mind racing with so many new opportunities associated with school. I was in a good mood when I decided to grab a pillow and watch a little television. I threw a Coleman sleeping pad on the floor and turned the TV to virtual fireplace. For 6 hours, video of a crackling campfire on the tundra of Norway played across the screen. The wind blew softly in the background as clouds slowly shifted across the mountains. My mind began to quiet, and my body started to relax as I began to doze. I'm not sure how much time passed before I was abruptly wakened by a sharp kick to my feet. My first thought was that Lena was up. She had to get up around 3:45 a.m. for work, and maybe she was telling me to get in bed. I rolled over and saw the room was empty. The clock said 2 a.m. I looked around the room for anything that could have caused this kicking sensation, but really, what did I hope to find? I groaned. I was so tired but too uneasy to just fall back asleep on the Coleman pad. With eyes half shut, I grabbed my pillow and trudged upstairs to bed. I'm not sure what's going on here lately. Maybe it's just the weather. It's a little strange. It's just a weird coincidence. When Grace and I were hiking Monday, we found a lot of treasures. Old cabin remnants, dishes, bottles, tailings, rough-hewn timber, tobacco tins, and a single hubcap way up in the canyon where the faint 2-track all but disappeared. The forest had swallowed the better portion of this evidence of a small mining operation. We climbed 1,300 feet in elevation and spent about 4 hours winding our way back into this steep remote canyon. It's hard to articulate just how far removed from any main trail this place is. We were at a point to turn around, but Grace wanted to press in across the meadow. She just had a sense that there was something a little deeper in the pines. I agreed to continue. Unless I spotted a tick, then we'd be heading back. To put it into perspective, I hate ticks more than scorpions. We walked through some tall grass, bordered by vanilla-scented pines on either side. Grace was a few paces in front of me when I heard her say, "Would you look at that?" Tucked in the grasses was an old steel Chevy hubcap that we later dated to the early 1950s. I opened my pack so Grace could gently place the hubcap inside. It was pure treasure. As I shouldered my pack and cinched the straps, I looked down at my pant leg and saw a red tick crawling up toward my waistline. Then I saw another, and flicked them both across the border and practically into Montana. Grace had one on her too, so we decided to turn back. When we got home, Grace dropped me off at the house and then ran back into town to grab some groceries for dinner. Her mother, Tabitha, arrived home shortly after Grace and had an interesting story to share. I was in the service porch doing laundry when I saw Tabitha pull into the yard. I went into the kitchen and continued with chores when it occurred to me that Tabitha was taking longer than usual to walk into the house. Just then, the back door opened and Tabitha came into the kitchen. "There was an older man that walked into the yard," she said. "What man?" I asked her. "Oh, I didn't know who he was. He just asked me if I'd found the hubcap he lost off his truck." Tabitha said the man had walked, not driven, onto the property. She didn't recognize him and didn't notice which direction he went when he left. When I went outside to see whether I could find the mysterious man, there was no one there.